What's going on, guys? Welcome to a special Wednesday, August 1st edition of RGT News. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of news going on except for two major news stories. We got second quarter sales figures for the PlayStation 4 and the Nintendo Switch, plus software for the Nintendo Switch. So in this video, that's what we're going to be breaking down. We're going to first talk about the PS4, then we're going to talk about the Nintendo Switch, both hardware and software sales, whereas Sony doesn't give the software side of things, they just talk the hardware. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's get into the Wednesday, August 1st edition of RGT News. Let's go!
RGT News coming at you right now. Woo! RGT 85 coming to you with the freshest video game news. Now take it away.
Alright, so these sales figures are from April 1st to June 30th of 2018, pertaining both to the PlayStation 4 and the Nintendo Switch. We're going to talk about the PlayStation 4 because, like I said, Sony doesn't really get into the nitty-gritty things, and then we'll talk about Nintendo stuff, and we'll come to some final conclusions. So, starting things off with the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 4 actually ended up shipping more units than Sony initially expected. They shipped 3.2 million units in the second quarter of 2018, from April 1st until June 30th, 2018. That brings the grand total up to 82.2 million, and a lot of people are attributing this to the success of God of War. Now, like I said, Sony doesn't really get into the nitty-gritty of things like software sales unless they do like a special press announcement, but they did mention that they were that God of War sales are exceeding expectations, which doesn't really surprise me, honestly. God of War was a fantastic single-player experience game. It had beautiful graphics, it played really well, and it was a game that I was a bit nervous maybe got away, too far away from the original source material, that fast-paced gameplay style, but they really made it work with God of War. It's definitely been one of my favorite games of 2018 and has definitely been a catalyst for PlayStation 4 sales, in my opinion. Of course, Sony has games like Spider-Man coming out for the second half of the year, so it should be another strong year for Sony. And I think by the time it's all said and done for the PlayStation 4, that system will definitely hit over 100 million units shipped and over 100 million units sold. It's been an absolute phenomenon this generation, and with a strong lineup of games like Spider-Man, The Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima, all those games, I think it's just going to keep propelling the PlayStation brand. So 3.2 million consoles shipped between April and June. Pretty impressive stuff from Sony. But let's be honest, a lot of you guys are here because you want to hear about the Nintendo sales, and like I stated in the title of this video, and maybe a little bit of a clickbaity thumb, Nintendo Switch sales are actually down for the second half, or for the second quarter of 2018. And a lot of people are starting to run with this story. A lot of people are putting that Nintendo doom and gloom that we always see. But when you actually look at the data, it's actually pretty funny, in my opinion, because it's a trend that we actually saw last year, just sort of continuing with the Nintendo Switch. Now, Nintendo Switch managed to ship 1.88 million units in the second quarter, from April to June 30th of 2018, putting the system at nearly 20 million units so far, 19.67 to be exact. And 1.8 million, that's less than 2 million. That's obviously down from what we have seen from both quarter one and, of course, the strong quarters of last year. But when you look at the big spectrum of things, it's really not that big of a deal, because like I said, this is a trend that we actually saw last year. Last year, for quarter one for the Nintendo Switch in 2017, they shipped 2.74 million. In quarter two, they only shipped 1.96 million. So once again, you saw a bit of a downturn in the second quarter. And when you look at the second quarter for Nintendo, when it comes to software releases, you had a lot of rehash stuff. You had games like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. You had stuff like Mario Tennis. You had Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. Aside from Mario Tennis, there wasn't too many blockbuster games coming from Nintendo. You also had Kirby Star Allies, which, actually did pretty well when we get into the software sales data, but still, there wasn't huge stuff like we saw in the latter half of last year. So when you talk about the latter half of 2018 with games like Smash Brothers and Pokemon Let's Go, it's obviously going to be a very different scenario. So yes, Nintendo Switch sales are down, but is it a cause for an alarm? No, because it's just going to go back up once the bigger titles start coming, once you start seeing things like the online stuff, because because it's just what happened last year. It's unfortunately Nintendo just had a softer second quarter like they did last year, and that's what ends up happening. So when you look at the bigger spectrum of things when it comes to Switch software totals, you have 86.93 million units shipped, and that's absolutely crazy. They also talk about 3DS hardware and software. The 3DS is at 72.89 million units shipped, and when it comes to software, it's at 367.84 million. The Nintendo Wii U is actually mentioned as well with 13.56 million, and Wii U software at 102.28 million. So not only is the Nintendo Switch almost at the level of the GameCube, because the GameCube in system sales sold about 22 million units, it's almost at the software sales of the Wii U's life to date in terms of software in just a year and 1 quarter, a year and 3-4 months essentially, which is absolutely crazy because although the Nintendo Switch or the Nintendo Wii U did not sell that well, software tended to sell pretty good. Smash Brothers, Splatoon, games like that actually sold pretty well on the Nintendo Wii U. So once again, you're starting to see a lot of people gravitating towards the Nintendo Switch. Net sales are up to 1.513 billion, which is up 9% year over year, and profit is at 394.6 million, which is up 42% year over year. It's also worth noting that the NES Classic Edition, which was relaunched in June, has recorded sales of 1.26 million units. So all in all, when you look at that sort of stuff, obviously Nintendo is not in a bad place. If we're talking a 9% increase year over year in terms of net sales and profit up 42%, that's a lot. You know, those are big numbers for Nintendo. So that's actually a really good thing. Now they also break down which games have sold over 1 million copies on the Nintendo Switch. We've got updated shipping figures for games like Super Mario Odyssey, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and even some newcomers to it. So I wanted to look at these games as well. First up, Super Mario Odyssey is still the best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch with 11.17 million units sold or shipped for the game. So that, of course, when you tie it into the 19.67 million units for the Nintendo Switch that have shipped, that's over a 50% attach rate. Another game is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 10.35 million units shipped. So once again, an over 50% attach rate. A Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at 9.32 million, making it the best-selling Zelda game to date, and almost a 50% attach rate. Splatoon 2 at 6.76 million units. 1-2 Switch at 2.45 million. Here's a surprise game that I did not expect to succeed over 2 million units shipped, and that is ARMS at 2.01 million. Kirby Star Allies is also knocking on the 2 million door at 1.89 million. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 at 1.42 million. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze at 1.4 million. And Mario Tennis Aces at 1.38 million. Now what's curious about Mario Tennis Aces is this game released in the latter half of June. So those sales figures are for just like a week in June, which is actually pretty good for that game. You know, it's been getting both negative and positive press. Some people seem to really enjoy it. Some people seem to not so much enjoy it. When I played it at Too Many Games with Wood during his live stream, I actually had fun with it. I think it's great for local multiplayer. I could see online multiplayer being really fun as well when you're playing with your friends. So all in all, I think this says one thing about the video game industry. It's in a very healthy place. When you've got the PlayStation 4, a system that's been on the market for so long, still moving 3.2 million units in the second quarter of 2018, that's very damn impressive. And things like God of War are really help propelling that. When you have many Nintendo Switch games succeeding over the 1 million unit sold mark already, that's also very impressive. When you factor in that they're at nearly 20 million units shipped after the failure of the Wii U, Nintendo has obviously rebounded from this. Are they down? Has this been the worst quarter for the Nintendo Switch? Yes, it has been, but I don't think it's indicative of what we're going to see with the Nintendo Switch. It's also the lightest quarter of Nintendo releases on the Nintendo Switch, and let's be honest, a lot of Nintendo releases tend to drive Nintendo game sales. That's why people pick up a Nintendo console most of the time, is for the Nintendo games on there, and then they pick up things like the third-party games. You're seeing great success with third-party games. Games like Sonic Mania Plus is selling best on the Nintendo Switch. Crash Bandicoot Insane and Trilogy is still the top-selling game in Europe on both the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox One. So all in all, the video game industry is in a very healthy place, and all because Nintendo had a slow quarter does not mean doom and gloom for the Nintendo Nintendo Switch. So don't listen to these people who are saying all these crazy things. Once some of these bigger games start coming out for the Nintendo Switch, once the word Pokemon starts showing up in people's homes, it's just going to be absolutely insane. So thank you for checking out this special edition of RGT News. Like I said, only 2 major news stories to talk about, but I wanted to dive in depth. I wanted to look at all the sales figures and give you guys my impressions and opinions on it. But what are your impressions and opinions on it? Do you think Nintendo needs to have a bit of a cause of concern because of the lack of Nintendo Switch units shipped in the second quarter of 2018? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Make sure you check out some other videos I've been working on. We talked about the Nintendo Switch in Japan recently. We talked about Code of Princess EX. There's a whole bunch of reviews coming up. A lot of cool stuff for Nintendo Switch fans and of course retro gaming fans. There's some new retro videos on the channel as well. And I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.